Welcome to Annapolis Mosaics. Our show spotlights people in our city who are involved in activities designed to promote good human relations. I am Michael Keller, your host, and the chair of the Annapolis Human Relations Commission. The commission is a city board that seeks to promote equal opportunity and to eliminate discrimination. Annapolis Mosaics has initiated a special series on the future of public housing in Annapolis. And the idea for this series came from one of our viewers. My guest today is Robert Eades, a community activist and the owner of the Neat and Clean Taxi Company. Robert, welcome to Annapolis Mosaics.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much.
Well, tell our viewers a little bit about your background as it relates to your experience with the issue of public housing.
Well, my experience with public housing started 1997. I was kind of coming around of getting my life together from some negative ways I was living and some drug issues I had. And I applied to public housing with my two older sons, and I got in. But once I got in, the conditions that they were asking people to live under and the things we were being told we had to do and couldn't do, so it seemed to me like my civil rights was being stomped on or not kept up. And so I became the vice president of Old Court, Cos Creek Terrace Tenant Council. And so begins a long fight with public housing and our issues and things that we deserve and things that we don't deserve. And as the time came, I got myself together. I was able to start driving a cab, and I was moving up. So my rent initially went from $50 to $125 to $200 to basically $550. When I got around $550, I was finding out that there were places out there you could get a mortgage from. But I didn't just leave public housing because there were a lot of people behind who weren't as involved as I was or didn't know how to get involved in fighting their public housing issues. At that time, Ms. Crossland was the director, and she was telling people they had these big double sinks with the washing machines hooked up to it, and she was telling people, well, you can't have that. And she went around just taking out people's double sinks and putting it in and taking them. They couldn't have washers and dryers. And Housing Authority provided you with a little small icebox with a very small freezer, and then she told people they couldn't have extra freezers and air conditioning. And I went, this woman is off the hook. Most of these people are poor people living on an income or very little money, so they have to shop where they can get the bargain deals. I mean, to take away a freezer and stop a person from being able to go in and get 5 loaves of bread for $2 as compared to $2.69 for a loaf, you're hurting a person's family. So I got involved and started doing things and we battled, and Crossland resigned, and other issues started to apply. And at that time, I applied for a house up on Pleasant Street. It was being ran by Homes for America. And I went in and I filled out the paperwork, and the lady called me back, Miss Kathy Nebner, I think her last name was Nebner, and told me she was sorry that I didn't qualify for the program and that I didn't rank. Well, about 2 weeks later, she calls me back, says the director and the owner of this program says she's seen you on television, she's seen you, and she wants you to be a homeowner. So she's going to put you in a program that's coming up that's going to be called Lease to Purchase. And I went and I talked to the owner, which happened to be Miss Trudy McFall. And for heaven couldn't bid, I thought it was just good luck. I didn't know why this woman would go back and bend any rules to help me out. But hey, I wanted to be a homeowner. I didn't question it. So as time went on, me and Mrs. McFall, we worked pretty good together. I had worked on the mayor's campaign, and the mayor asked me, did I know any good people that would be candidate for Public Housing Board of Commissioners? And I suggested her name to the board. Well, after she got over to the board, and she was there for a few moments, they voted her in as chairperson. Thus, the downfall between Ms. Trudy McFall and I started. Because I think public housing is a place that people need to go and get a break. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some problems in public housing. There are some people who take advantage of public housing. But public housing is a very much needed entity in our society, because we always going to have those who have and those who have not, and those who, for one other reason, fall down on their luck, need a break, such as I did. If that break hadn't have been there for me, I wouldn't have my own business. You know, I wouldn't be a homeowner. I wouldn't be a strong community activist. I mean, all of that came out of me getting a break to getting a home. Why shouldn't the person behind me be entitled to that same break? Public housing right now is what I have is being under attack by what's called a silent weapon. It don't make no loud explosions. You don't see no loud bombs blowing up. But at the same time, if you look around, the communities are devastated. In the city of Annapolis, I grew up, I never knew public housing was any different than any other housing. But now, all of a sudden, we're called projects. People think that everybody that live in public housing is shiftless, worthless, and don't work, don't want nothing, and not trying to better themselves, and that's just not true. And the public housing has done nothing to change that image. It's created, it's taken all of its programs out. I mean, the only thing you can get if your little kid gets out of school is go get a basketball, and they may have a couple hours of after-school tutoring, but there's no nurturing programs for teenagers. There's nothing to keep a young man who goes to school, gets A's and B's, from having to stand on the same corner with a young man who's just gave up on himself. There's no programs initiative for that young man who needs that extra boost to help himself other than a basketball. I mean, everybody poor don't look for sports or basketball as their way out. Academic skills and educational skills are things that we need. So I've dedicated myself to helping people in public housing lift themselves up. While at the same time, you have people like Ms. Trudy McFall, whose agenda is to, in my opinion, play upon the poor. Come in and tell people who she don't know how they live, how they should live, what's best for them. I mean, no sooner than she got to the Board of Commissioners, she built her company built this place down on Homes for the Glen, down on Newtown Drive. Now, she wanted me to promote that to people, and I refused to do it because it's a program where you have 15 years lease to purchase. After 15 years, then they're going to come back and help you buy a house. But she first went and got all the people out of the poor community to put them into these houses. And the thing is, after 15 years, you're looking to redo a house. You take 15-year-old house and go and put your money down on it, in my opinion, you're looking to rebuild or put another roof on, the windows are set, you need to redo. So a person's going to buy into basically a house that isn't a new home. So I didn't agree with the program. That was the first downfall. And then she told me that she thought Old Court and College Creek Terrace should be sold, and so that people can become homeowners. Well, everybody's not in a position to be a homeowner. Everybody doesn't want to be a homeowner. She thought public housing should be brought down to about 400 people who are living on a fixed income and disabled. What about the guy that needs the same type of break that I did to climb up and pull himself up? Everybody that comes into public housing is not looking to get a handout for the next 20 years. You know, in my opinion, it's the housing authority who has to set the rules and the guidelines and work along with the community. I think that every person that's in the community, poor, black, or whatever, needs to become aware of the fact that they got to pull their own bootstraps up. You know, I'll say it like this. If you wait on the master to give you something, the master's going to do what he always do, work you to death and give you nothing. If you're poor and you're in the public housing and you need a little help, work your way up. That's what it's set up for. It's not a place to come and say, I got a place and I'm going to live here for $25, $30 for the next 20 years. It's a bootstrap. It's a pull yourself up situation. And we need to, as a community, black, poor, and unity, work together. Better our public housing, improve our conditions, not keep waiting for someone else to come in and do the job. When you have people like Ms. Trudy McFall come in and do the job, under her guidance as a chairperson of public housing, she sold off a couple communities. I mean, that's ridiculous. And for the people who need this help, who were told that these new houses, such as over at on Clay Street, it's 164 units. They're going to rebuild 164 units, and they told everybody that you're eligible to come back as long as you're in good standings with public housing. Well, we kept asking, what's good standards, Mr. Eric Brown? What's good standards? It would just say as long as you're in good standards. Now, we have a young man who's living with his mother, who's 85 years old, been living with her for years, had a record, did some trouble 20 years ago. Then they're telling this young man, you're not in good standards. You can't move back with your mother. We have one young lady, and these are people that are still living in public housing. We have one young lady who now is being told that she makes too much money to live in public housing, but she's living in public housing now. I mean, they're coming up with all kinds of conditions of telling people that you can't come back to this community. When at the same time in the Capital newspaper, on the 18th Sunday's paper, there was a big article in there, new housing for rent, Oberry Court, public housing, new housing for rent. I had a young lady call over and who I know had a good work history. They told her she could move in and she'd probably be paying about $800 a month. So what I'm saying all that to say is, they're tearing down public housing. They're finding a way to get rid of poor people in the city. And it's being done through the plan implemented in Housing Authority by Ms. Trudy McFall and Dennis Conti, and Mr. Eric Brown is still fulfilling that goal of what they were trying to do. I was at a meeting just yesterday where here's an issue that we had 8 years ago with Ms. Crossland, air conditioning. He's still telling poor people, and today, you can't have an air conditioner. Now, air conditioning is not a luxury as it was in the 60s when I was coming along. It's a necessity now. You have people with health problems, old age, respiratory problems. If you just go to the hospital records and look at how many people come in from heat-related problems because they don't have air, or they're out in the heat, or they have respiratory problems, they need the air, this is ridiculous. We shouldn't be having these issues, and they're threatening to put people out if they have the air conditioners in. We got these small problems when the city public housing of Annapolis should be focusing on providing decent, safe, affordable housing, and we should be having programs that would uplift people and get them to work their way off of public housing instead of kicking them out, booting them out at the last minute, coming up with all kinds of crazy regulations, or to say that, okay, everybody has to be a homeowner. Mike, you work with the Human Relations Commission. You meet all different types of people. You worked in your school board in your capacity. Everybody's not capable of what everybody else is. And to tell everybody that you have to be a homeowner, some people don't know how to take care of home. Some people never taught to take care of a home. Some people don't want to worry of a home. Some people are not going to get past Burger King, McDonald's, and Wendy jobs. So it's just going to always be poor and needy. In the city of Annapolis with 36,000 plus, we actually got 1,104 public housing units. So I would say that'd bring you around 4,000 people. How do people scream and cry that that's too many? How can people be so vicious to say that everybody in public housing is looking for a handout? Especially ones who don't come down, who don't volunteer, who don't choose to meet people, to find out what's on a person, to see what you might could do to help a person off. For a person like Mr. Dennis Conti or Mr. They've never experienced the public housing experience. They take these seats and then just dictate what a person needs, what's going on in a person's life. You know, public housing right now, in my opinion, it's going down. And it's going down because lack of communication between leadership and tenants.
Okay, we're going to take a break right now, but when we return, I am going to be following up with Robert Eades on some of the specific points that he has made in our program so far. We've been talking with Robert Eades, a community activist and the owner of the Neat and Clean Taxi Company, about his experiences and views in the area of public housing in Annapolis. One of the features of the public housing facilities in Annapolis is that it's become a permanent home for many families. Around 11% of the residents who live in public housing in Annapolis have been in those facilities for 30 or more years. And at the same time, there is a waiting list of nearly 1,400 people. Now, you initially, earlier in our discussion, indicated that this should not be the case, that the people should not make public housing a permanent home. What do you do about it? How do we deal with this so that we get people who have been there for reasonable periods of time to leave public housing so that this big logjam of 1,400 people can be accommodated? What do we do about that?
You know, first, Mike, I'd like to comment, but it's funny when these numbers come, when the Housing Authority has an issue to fight, and the numbers always seem to grow on this waiting list. You know, and it's funny how if you go through asking them about this waiting list, but there is a waiting list. My opinion is that Housing Authority has allowed over the last 30 years people to become squatters. Mm-hmm. You know, if there was adequate supervision at the Housing Authority level, then you would have somebody sit in there and say, okay, Mr. Eades came in, he was pouring down and out, and he was paying $50. Well, his next year income shows that he's increased, and now he's paying $125. Well, in the following 2 years, come his increases paid, he's paying now 33% of his thing, he's paying $250. Well, why isn't there somebody there following me and saying, this guy's constantly growing up? Pretty soon he's going to be in a position to become a low-income home owner. Mm-hmm. Somebody should be there, because I am in public housing, mm-hmm. bringing me along, teaching me about what's the steps. When I got to, okay, now Mr. Eades is making $550. The county has a low interest rate program. Habitat has a program. Homes for America had a program. We should guide Mr. Eades toward those goals of using Housing Authority as a stair step to step out of. But if you don't have anybody there, and as long as I can stay there and I have no initiatives to move on, then a lot of people are going to become squatters. Now, personally, I think fixed income, disabled or disability, they should be allowed to stay. They should not have a time cap because we know that they're not going to progress in becoming with a job that pays them affordable living. Or they're not going to have a job where they can step up and make more money. They're at where they are. I think they should be allowed to stay. I think they should be allowed to live there and have a comfortable life. But other than the young people that has the opportunity to work and grow and better themselves, we should have something in place to work along with them, to help them, show them how to go through steps to get jobs, how to fill out checks or whatever if they haven't learned that. Because we can't assume that everybody in public housing is just a bum. Some people, for whatever reasons, if you came out of a bad home, father gone, mothers in the streets or whatever, just whatever scenario that could put you in a position where you just didn't get what you needed, the nourishment and the growth as a child. Then we have to check that out and see, is this why this person living here? Did this person graduate from school? Does this person need some education skills? That's how we end that problem. That's in my opinion.
More than 40% of the residents of the Annapolis public housing facilities are 17 years of age or younger. Recently, the Annapolis Human Relations Commission initiated a program which we call Dialogue Projects. It's funded by a grant which we received from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Annapolis. It's not taxpayer supported in any way. And what it does is it's designed to match a group of folks from the public housing unit and then a group of folks from a neighboring community for the purpose of discussing issues that they have in common. We had the first of these sessions in March between residents from the Eastport Civic Association, members of that organization, and residents from Eastport Terrace Harbor House. About 24 people took part, equally divided between the two communities. I facilitated along with another member of the commission, Ida Mae Sims. And the thing that I remember from that session, Robert, was that the issue which predominated was, what do we do with our youth? How do we get our youth out off the street, keep them out of trouble, get them involved in meaningful activities? How do we engage them? And this is something that you touched on earlier. I know you've been very involved with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Annapolis, very concerned about youth. How do we mentor youth to overcome what some people have perceived as a youth problem in the public housing facilities of Annapolis?
First, I'd just like to make it clear, because you said I've been affiliated with Boys and Girls Clubs. I don't want people to think that I'm affiliated with the National Association. I have a neat and clean Boys and Girls Club that I start on my own. And what I do is I take kids from the age of 2 years old to 18. And what I first teach them is that child that's 2 years old, well, that child that's 3 years old or 4 years old, he owes them those 2 years of respect. And I teach these children how to respect one another. And goes on. See, you can't, if the Housing Authority doesn't provide any structured activities for these children, there's nothing going on in the Housing Authority other than a basketball. That's it. So you have children allowed just to race and run up and down the streets. They have no recreation center where they can go and sit down, pick up a book and read it. They don't have a recreation center where they can learn what Chinese checkers is or regular checkers or chess. They don't have the facilities that they can go in and learn what they need to learn to socially grow. So all of a sudden, bam, you got 17, 16, 15-year-old kids just standing on the corner. Well, you've not prepared them for anything else. You've not offered them anything else. The program like you just talked about, you're just getting that out. That's not been offered before. So you have children who live in these big communities with one way in and one way out, not learning or not having the opportunity to engage in other things. Now, when I was coming along, it was a lot different. We had the Police Boys and Girls Club. We had Zastro running out of the Stanton Center. We had Pip when he was mayor. They had so many different boxing programs, wrestling programs, We had the Merlin Dets band. We had a lot of things to engage in. So when a young man like me, who fell off the limb and got in trouble and went to the streets, it wasn't an option, it was a choice. So that was a choice I made because I had 20 different other choices around me. You know, I don't know why it's so hard now. Zastro ran that Stanton Center with basically no money. Every day he had some kind of program going on. A man come in and teach us how to play the accordion. A man come in and teach us how the cowboys would do the ropes with big things. A man come in for boxing. Someone come in for teaching, tutoring. I mean, I don't know how he got all these things with no money that now we make that it takes a lot of money to get involved in the teaching and educating and being mentors for our children. I'm on a program now where I just started last week. I'm going into the barbershops on Saturdays. And I'm challenging the young men in there to take back their communities, to take back activities for their youth by getting involved in whatever small thing or big thing that you see can do. But first thing what we do is we the men in our communities have to stop depending on somebody else from doing our job. We have to step up and do the little or the biggest thing we can to help. Me with my Neat and Clean Boys and Girls Club, that's what I do. I get them out to Sandy Point, get them to the Blacks and Wax, I get them to the Smithsonian, I get them to the Reginald Lewis. I just get them out of Annapolis. We've just got on a bus and rode. And they said, where are we going? I said, I don't know, we'll stop somewhere. We ended up in Virginia at a little picnic, just a different area. But what we have to do to change the mentality of the youth is get involved in their lives.
Thank you for viewing our program today, and please join us again on Annapolis Mosaics. If you would like to have more information about the Annapolis Human Relations Commission, please call us at the number on the screen before you, 410-263-7998, or you can email us at hrcommission@annapolis.gov. You can also check out our page at the City of Annapolis website. Go to www.annapolis.gov, click on to City Government, then Boards and Commissions, and scroll down to the Human Relations Commission page. And always remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "We have flown the air like birds and swum the seas like fishes, but have yet to learn the simple act of walking the earth as brothers and sisters."